Hi, Internet. You know I totally have a thing for the truths that are both literally and more metaphorically true. So this is going to be a video about one of those, and it's a good one. So, to start from the literal side, this is something that I am both being taught and teaching in my Tai Chi and Kung Fu classes. And it's a truth about how to use core muscles. Personally, I think that core muscle gets a lot of jaw flapping and not a whole lot of actual action behind it when people are doing the things that they say are so core muscle intensive. But this is definitely not true in internal martial arts because it is all about the core muscles. So when we're trying to describe to people how to move your entire body as a unit centered around your core muscles as, as this spring-loaded, expanding, contracting tower of muscle that you actually need to use and not just flail your limbs around and let it sit there. We talk about having your dantian, look it up if you don't know where that is, but having your dantian be almost like a gravity well. Like if the rest of your body is a solar system, everything has an attraction to your dantian, and everything is kind of connected to that center point in you by it's a force, but it's a balanced force, like gravity orbiting thing is a balanced force. So as you expand, you feel that you're kind of pulling against that. And as you move, you feel that all of your movements involve a contraction, almost like, slingshotting in orbit around something. This involves not just shoving this out here, but remembering that connection between these things as this moves. So that's the physical component of this truth. But of course, when you look at it more deeply, talking about orbiting your own center and talking about, always being centered on that balance point and always remembering that the center of you is where you're coming from, is an incredibly valuable lesson in a lot of things. I'm going to talk about two of them right now. The first is personal relationships, and that will be short. And then the second one that I hope I will have time to make a little more detailed is some of the kind of tricky, dangerous parts of deep internal brain hacking and how to stick with the center of yourself and kind of have confidence about proceeding even when you're dealing with things that are really up close and scary sometimes. But first, for personal relationships, I would like to quote one of the commentaries in one of the translations of the I Ching that I have. There are many, many commentaries, many notes, and many highlighty bits. But this is one of them. This is a commentary on relationships. It's called Natural Light in Relationships. And this is also just pieces of it. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It takes too long. Use tolerance and patience toward others. Be loyal and forgiving, warm and sincere. Extend your harmonious energy to others. Do not complain so as not to pass on your negativity. Approach everyone with an open mind and without pushing yourself forward, but do not bare your heart when meeting for the first time. Judge yourself well and others moderately. Be forgiving and forgive fully and frankly. There is always a good reason to forget another's faults. Remember, even the sages were not faultless. Be flexible and yielding and do not quarrel. Bear an insult and keep your dignity. To repress a moment of anger can save you much regret. Strive to be selfless, not self-centered. Love this one. A self-centered person expects things from others, while a selfless person gives to others and never asks for anything in return. Win people's hearts and do not impose upon their wills. This is an important one for smart people because it's sometimes easy to impose upon their wills. Don't do that. With affinity, people will meet each other from a great distance. Without affinity, even when face to face, they might never truly meet. Good one for the internet world there. When people are of the same mind, their integrity will cut metal. I love that one. If one associates with unvirtuous people, one will be negatively influenced by them. Be fraternal and friendly to everyone, but keep your own balanced nature whole and untouched. Their integrity will cut metal. Come on! Ugh, how does everybody not study Chinese people, right? So, I'm not actually going to comment too much on that, and it's perhaps only tangentially relevant to this, although it won't be more directly relevant to my next blog post, which will be the one on choice. I'm going to do kind of a practical stoicism, modern stoicism thing. It'll be fun. Anyway, the other thing that I wanted to discuss, and yay, I actually have enough time to do it, is when you are looking to make changes to your psychological operations, you are going to almost certainly run into some roadblocks. There's, we all have stuff, some more than others, but we all have pain and crappiness and kinks in the system that we carry around. And it's entirely unlikely, but possible that you could, fix your brain in terms of like undoing the psychological time problem and learning to exist peacefully in moments and solving the window versus psychology program and learning to think in 3D and all of the different ways I've tried to package that without ever encountering any of the really tricky, nasty, dark parts of your psychology. I highly, highly doubt it. Or maybe I'm just unlucky. And the road that I have had to walk here has been fraught with running face first into all of those things. But actually, I think there's definitely a George slaying the dragon metaphor that is real here, that you are going to run into some of these tough things. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about doing that, because I am fortunate in two ways. First of all, I've done it a whole ton for a long time, and I've made some really major changes that are very deliberate, complete 180s. And also, I've had some good help. Not the whole way. I've had a lot of bad help, or not help. But in the last couple years, I've been fortunate to find an excellent therapist in a relatively rare style of therapy that has just helped me a ton. And I think part of the reason for that is just that I found a therapist who was willing to work with me, and so it was someone that I was able to bring my own metaphors and my own understanding of things and the kind of preconceptions and ideas about how my brain worked and how to change it to the table there. And we worked together, kind of helping incorporate her decades of professional knowledge and the rather good studying and system that she knew into what would work for me. I'm not going to give you that because obviously that's your mileage may vary in big flashing lights. And you need to find your own. If you need help, go hire a professional or find somebody who's good enough at it that will help you for free. Or if you can't get help, do what you can do until you do find help. But regardless, you will probably encounter these things at some point and need to be sitting alone in a room with them. And that can be incredibly difficult. So here's a couple things that I have picked up over the last several months, during which time I've made some fairly giant, funky changes, and had a lot of success with it. But some of it kind of put me face to face with things in a fast enough manner that I realized what my twitch reactions were and what the things that I had learned to do were that helped. So here are some of the dangers that you can run into. First of all, you can get very good at introspection, at thinking about yourself, without getting very good at contemplation, which is watching yourself. And when you do that, you risk taking a bunch of negative constructs and negative thinking that you're used to doing and aiming it at yourself and just sitting there, bathing in the nuclear light of your own self-hatred. And that's not a good place to be. And it can turn what you thought was going to be something that would, bring you closer towards being generally okay with the things, into just sitting there slicing yourself up and getting under layers of things in a really negative way. So that's one danger. Tied to that is you can find the ability to go quiet without finding the ability to quiet your mind. You can learn to go and shut off whatever's going on with you without shutting off the thinking, which means all that becoming still is doing is giving, your brain and the negative things, more freedom to run. Hey, you're not distracting yourself by moving or doing anything anymore, so we can have a field day. And that can be, a bad thing. The third thing that can happen is you can unintentionally pass the microphone to parts of yourself that you really don't want to listen to. Um, if you are, if you are just being quiet, or you are just being introspective, and you're not consciously controlling where your attention is, or not, or not aware that, something has slid a hand in there and kind of snuck the mic as it was being passed down the line, you can find yourself listening to parts of yourself that you try very hard most of the time not to listen to, and they can be really damaging. It's like standing in front of a abusive, berating person, except that they know you really well through your entire life and have access to your whole subconscious when it comes to what to throw at you. So that can be bad. And here are the things that you can do about them, or the fixes that I've found, noticing that those things tend to happen when I'm trying to brain hack. And by brain hacking, I'm referring to like any form of meditation or diarying or journaling or thinking or movement, or just, some people just sit down. I will sometimes sit down with a whiteboard and try and chart out my own logic and see if I can actually catch myself being irrational and convince myself otherwise. There is a logical way to do it. There's also just, contemplation is a huge and incredibly useful way to do it. But regardless of what you're doing, you can still encounter the problems I just described, and here's something you might be able to do about them. First of all, if you have a thing to tell yourself, if you have, and I'm not referring to, we're not going to use this like a mantra, but think of it as the same sort of thing. You want a thing that kind of encapsulates what you're trying to do and the good things about how you're trying to do it. For instance, I am going to improve my self-esteem by realizing that my tendency to think of myself as a worthless or bad person is coming from a wrong place in my head. I'm going to go in there and I'm going to access that place and I'm going to feel it, and I'm going to turn on all the lights and throw open all the windows and realize that what I thought was there in that room that was the reason that I was worthless is not really there. Pulling an example out of the air, but yes, it's one I've done before. But before you go in, you have something, and I find that, again, the I Ching is kind of like my somatic Eastern philosophy book of choice. But actually anything that gives you good advice and good words that you can often absorb and hang on to is a great thing. Crack open your Rig Veda or your Bible or your Quran or whatever it is that you go to find that kind of really good words you can hang on to, and find some good ones right before you sit down to make these changes. And then if you feel things veering south, if you feel like, uh-oh, I just called up all that pain and all that's happening is I'm starting to cry again and this is really kind of ruining my day. Or, you turn a corner in your mind and find yourself up against some incontrovertible reason why you're worthless. Those things happen, you have something to revert to. You kind of go in with a intellectual lifeline that says, wait, remember, pain is not a punishment, pleasure is not a reward. Whatever it is that you've got, that's something that will help you kind of stay on track for this. So that's one thing, go armed with some words. Another thing is, don't be afraid to just breathe. Breathing is kind of the neutral state in contemplation or brain hacking, or if you're at your meta keyboard kind of, working on things. Breathing is just, you can just be there. It's like hovering your hands over the keyboard for a minute and just waiting. Don't be afraid to do that. You're not on a time limit. It can feel, especially when you're meditating, like you're on a time limit because you think you can only hold that state for so long. But pushing it is not going to help. Don't be afraid to just float and just breathe. If all you get out of it is that you spend 5 minutes just feeling the sensation of breathing and breath moving through your whole body and calm, that's good for you. That's, at the very least, we know that's psychologically really, or physically really good for you. So don't be afraid to just do that. If you're not comfortable pushing, stop pushing and just give yourself some floating time.